Hello. Hello. Oh. You want to say hi to the people? You want to say hi to the internet? Says no, just to you. Hi. Oh, I'm sorry. I know. He says, what are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, my name is Bekah. You might know me from Bekah's Bookshelf. You probably don't because it's a really small account. I'm a writer and I'm a reader, and I've been on Bookstagram for almost a year now. Well, actually no, closer to like 6 months. I decided to start a booktube, and I know this might seem like a kind of random video to start with, but I'm very chaotic, so this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm doing a little book haul, quite a big book haul actually. I'm doing a belated what I got for Christmas book haul because this year I asked everyone in my family and in my partner's family and any of my friends who were thinking of me just to only get me books this year. Hi, I'm really sorry. The camera keeps deleting my footage and it keeps turning off, so the light is really not ideal, and I just really want to apologize for the quality of this video. I'm really gonna work on improving it in the future. I'm gonna have better lights. I'm gonna figure out how to focus my camera better. I'm gonna have a microphone. This is just my first try. I know there's not going to be that many of you watching, so I'm just going to use this as the chance to figure out what I'm doing, and I just really want to apologize if it's not up to the quality that you like. Thank you so much for coming to watch my video, and I'm just going to jump right in. So the first thing I want to talk about is I got a Kobo. So I never thought I would be an e-reader bitch, but basically I love to read in the bath because reading is like just such a calming form of self-care for me, and whenever I have rough mental health days, I take a really long bath and I just read, and it's just a really nice form of escapism for me. And I get really nervous about getting my books wet, so I usually just read on my phone on my little Kindle app, but my eyes are not the greatest, and I also get nervous about dropping my phone in the bath, so I really wanted to get a Kobo because it is waterproof. I don't think it's like waterproof enough that you could like scuba dive and read in the ocean with it, but you can get water on it and just like wipe it off and it's fine. So I also really like how it has these buttons that flip the page, and but I already have this book called Sisters by Daisy Johnson downloaded, and I also am going to download Blue Nights by Joan Didion and Cultish, which I have both of those on my computer, so I'm going to download them onto here. And I'm really excited to read some books on my little e-reader. I also heard from people that like once you get a Kindle, like you're an e-reader, like your reading power is unlocked and you just read so many books. And my goal this year is to read 100 books because I'm a writer, and reading really helps me improve my writing style, and I just really want to improve as a writer, and I also just like love reading, and I want to expand the amount of books that I get into my day-to-day life. So yeah, I also like how light it is. It's really nice for traveling. I always bring like 20 books with me, even if I'm going somewhere for 1 week. So instead I can bring this and I can put as many books as I want on it without worrying about it being super heavy. The next book I want to talk about is called Savvy. So my partner and I have this really cute tradition where we give each other our favorite children's books every year, and we kind of like alternate. Our first Christmas together, my partner gave me The Alchemist, and I had never read it before, and it was one of her favorite children books, and I absolutely loved it. And I'm really excited to read this. I got her A Wrinkle in Time last year. This book is basically about this family, and they all have these magical powers called savvies, and their savvies activate when they turn 13. And they don't know what their magical power is going to be until they're 13, and so basically it follows this main girl who's about to activate and unlock her superpowers, and she has this really cool and really unique superpower where she can touch people, and if they have any tattoos, she can like read their future and like read their thoughts and know their like values and like if they're a good person or not, as far as like that's what I'm understanding from what my partner's told me about it. I haven't read it yet, obviously. But that sounded amazing. My partner said it was perfect for me because I love magic, I love mystical things, I love fantasy, and I also love tattoos. So I just thought this was a really cool you know, it's just a really cool plot and a really cool concept, and I'm really excited to read it. I just signed up for a writing class for middle grade and young adult, so I've never tried stuff like that, so I think I might do a reading and writing vlog where I read this book and I try to write middle grade stuff at the same time, and we'll see how that goes. But I just really love this book. I don't know if you can see it that well from far away. I'm really sorry for the poor lighting and video quality. This is my first time making a video, so I'm still figuring this out. But I'm really excited to read this. Thank you so much, Alex. I love you. I really appreciate you. And I'm really excited to read this. Next book that I'm excited about is Queering the Craft. So I'm a practicing witch, and one of the first things I investigated when I was exploring witchcraft was Wicca. And I personally did not vibe with Wicca because I really respect it as a religion and a spirituality. However, it is very based on heteronormativity and gender binaries, and that is not for me. So as a queer witch, I really wanted to learn from other queer witches and learn about the history of queer witchcraft and how one can queer one's craft. And it's basically just like, you know, it's history, and it's like, you know, it's like basically like a little grimoire. It has all of these different spells and this different type of like witchcraft and history about witchcraft and personal accounts about witchcraft. And I found this from Chaotic Witch Aunts, their video on queer witchcraft sources, and I really trust them as a witch, so I'm really excited to read this. Thank you so much, Jan, for getting this for me. I really appreciate you. We do little witchcraft together, so I'm excited to pass this on to you after I read it, if you want to read it also. And then the next book I want to talk about is called Sisters, and I don't know if I mentioned this or not because I already recorded this video, so my brain's getting like a little fuzzy, but I like to go into books reading them without knowing a lot about the backstory, so this is kind of just going to be like a rapid fire haul where I don't know a lot about the books, but I'm like telling you what I do know, because for a lot of them I don't know that much. I know like a little bit, but I don't want to spoil too much for myself, so I like to go in a little disoriented, a little unfamiliar, try to figure out the mysteries of the stories that I'm walking through. Daisy Johnson is one of my favorite authors of all time, but as far as I know, she's only written one collection besides Sisters. Oh, she's actually written another thing called Everything Under, but the collection that I've read of hers is called Fen, and it's a collection of short stories, and it's one of the most impactful collection of short stories I've ever read. It was about, you know, fantasy and the carnality within fantasy, and how fantasy, if you look back at its roots of fairy tales, was originally actually really connected to horror, and how horrific humanity and the fantasy within humanity can be. And I actually already started reading this on my Kobo, and I really, really like it so far. There's this really weird section where one of the sisters like bit the other sister, and then she knew what she was thinking, and I was like, this is my type of book, because I love like telepathy and stuff like that, and like I love concepts about like interconnectedness of connected souls, and like how like there can be like this horrific monstrosity within femininity, and I'm really excited to explore that in this book. I don't know a lot about it. It has really unique, like a really unique voice that the author uses to tell the story. I think it's from a very young perspective, but I could be absolutely wrong because I have not read that much of it yet. But I'm really excited to read this. The next two books I want to talk about are both by Elena Ferrante. I want to talk about My Brilliant Friend and The Lost Daughter. Elena Ferrante wrote The Days of Abandonment, and I've read that before, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. I just really resonate to how the main character in that book like hallucinates people from her past as her life is falling apart and everything crumbles around her. I just very much related to that. So I really like her writing style and how she captures mental health and like societal understandings of what femininity is. So I'm just really excited to see how that transcends into these two books. And I really, really love Elena Ferrante's writing style. I just think technically she's a very talented writer. I also started The Lying Life of Adults by her, but I never finished it just because I am a mood reader, so I often like skip around in my reading. My Brilliant Friend, I don't know a lot about it, but my partner's mom actually really loves this story, and as far as I know, this book talks about complicated female friendships, hopefully some homoerotic female friendships, because I live for any sapphic content. And I also think based on the cover they're going to talk about like the nuclear family and potentially just about like the box that exists as motherhood, like the, you know, motherhood as a confinement source. And I'm really excited about that. Yeah. So the next book I want to talk about is The Lost Daughter. And The Lost Daughter, I've actually seen the movie before I read the book. I do think that's something I need to stop doing because I watched Shadow and Bone before I read the book. And in general, like, I will watch a movie or a TV show before I read a book just because I think TVs and movies are art forms as well and I really appreciate them. But I think in general, if something's a book, I should just read the book first so I don't ruin it for myself. There's so much about this story that I'm excited about based on the movie. It was just so disturbing and so like intriguing and mysterious and such interesting snapshots. I think Maggie Gyllenhaal did a really good job directing the film of this. Basically, it's about this woman. She's in her 40s or 50s and she's on vacation. I think she's a professor. She becomes really obsessed with this family, this Italian family, and specifically this mother and her daughter within that family, and like she starts to see herself in this other mother. There's this concept that keeps being brought up about how the mother that's the focus of the story has somehow lost connection to one of her daughters or two of her daughters. It's just kind of this really dark mystery that's hanging over the character throughout the entire story, and I'm really excited to see how that translates into the book. And I do apologize for watching the movie first. I really should have read the book first, but it happens. And I'm really excited to explore this book. The next book I want to talk about is Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. I was really excited about this book. I specifically asked for this book, and then I read it. And now I would like to immediately unhaul it. I will be selling or giving away this book because I hated this book. I think it's awful. I think it's disgusting. I think it's horrific. I understand there's a lot of stan culture around this book, so if you take an oppositional stance to me, just remember that that's okay. I fully respect your opinion, and I hope that you can respect mine as well. And if you're not interested in hearing about my opinion, just feel free to click off and not watch this video. But basically, this story, I didn't know a lot going into it, and I don't want to say too much that has spoilers. It is about feminine violence, and I personally think it's like one of those cases where the author may have been intending to critique something, but instead they perpetuate and glamorize something. And I just think the way that the internet interacts with this book kind of scares me, because the main character is a horrific human being, and she goes unchallenged throughout most of the book and relatively unscathed. So I just think the rhetoric in this book is extremely detrimental, and I will definitely say more about it in my January wrap-up, and I will have a full review explaining my thoughts on my Instagram. But I just personally, this book was not for me. I think if you have PTSD, you should not read this book because it's very much from the point of view of a female assailant. I just think that, you know, that's not something I ever wanted to experience. I don't want to see that point of view. I don't think that we should glamorize that. I think it's one of those cases where people are like, I support women's wrong. Oh my god, an unhinged woman. But she's actually a very detrimental and horrific, racist, transphobic, homophobic, and ableist character who goes unchallenged throughout the entire book and experiences no growth. So I hated this book. I would give it 0 stars if I could, and I am unhauling it. But I think I got cut off again, and basically the only one thing that I did like about it is at the end of the story, the character really starts to unravel, and her mental health is so tumultuous that she starts to question what is real and what is unreal. That's one of my favorite literary devices to use, is to access that liminal space between the real and the unreal. And I thought she did this really well with hallucinogenic writing style, but I will say I still don't think that redeems the harm that the author did by creating this monstrosity. But there are certain parts of the book that I think were written well. Overall, I think the writing is pretty mediocre, but I think that the way that she uses the dream sequencing is really good, and she has some good criticism in there, but it's mostly just, I would not recommend this book to anyone. But the next book I want to talk about is Bliss Montage by Ling. And I don't know a lot about this because, as I said before, I just really like to go into a book not knowing a lot about it because I like to be surprised, I like the mystery, I like the intrigue. And so I don't know if you can see this because I was noticing looking back that a lot of this is blurry footage, so I just really want to apologize for that. But basically, Bliss Montage was written by Ling, which is the same author of Severance, which is very, like, I would say that book is very viral on like TikTok and Instagram, and that book is about this really crazy pandemic that like turns the workforce into these like zombie like entities, and it's very interesting. There's a lot of criticism on capitalism, and I just think she's one of the most talented writers I've ever read. So I knew that she's an autobi author for me, and this book came out last year, but I've still been waiting to get my hands on it for so long, it seems like. And although I don't know a lot about it, I thought I'd read the blurb so that you could hear a little bit about it. Bliss Montage crashes through carefully built mirages. What happens when fantasy tears the screen of the everyday to wake us up? Could that waking be our end? In Bliss Montage, Ling brings us 8 wildly different tales of people making their way through the madness and reality of our collective delusions. Love and loneliness, connection and possession, friendship, motherhood, the idea of home. A woman lives in a house with all her ex-boyfriends. A toxic friendship grows up around a drug that makes you invisible. An ancient ritual might heal you of anything if you bury yourself alive. These and other scenarios investigate the ways that the outlandish and the ordinary are shockingly, deceptively, heartbreakingly alike. And that sounds amazing to me, and I personally think the one little line about being buried alive reminds me of a scene and like a extended metaphor in Garden of Earthly Bodies, which was my favorite book that I read last year. So I'm really excited that Ling is experimenting with a similar narrative flow. Not necessarily narrative flow, but just like a similar plot device. And I'm really excited to read this. It's definitely going to be one of the first books I talk about this year. The next book I want to talk about is The Years by Annie Ernaux. And this was given to me by my friend Robert. And it really meant a lot to me that he gave this to me because he said the writer really reminded him of me and my writing style. And it just meant a lot to me that he said that because she's really focused on genre bending, and that's what I really want to focus on, and that's what I focused on in my past work. I wrote like a novella in verse for my thesis where it was like trying to traverse through like memoir, nonfiction, fiction, and poetry and like try to combine all of those genres together. Or not necessarily, I don't know if those are genres, but like, you know what I'm saying. Like I was trying to mess around with that, and it meant a lot to me that he had been listening to that and found this author that I've never heard of, which I'm really excited about. One of my favorite things is when somebody gives me a book that I know nothing about or an author that I know nothing about, and I get really excited when it's someone that I can fall in love with and just get really excited about their writing style. And Annie Ernaux was kind of a pioneer in traversing through genre bending, and her writing style really reminds me of, I think it was Maggie Nelson's Argonauts and Bluets. She writes in these like little vignettes. I don't know, like I can't really show you that, but she writes in these short blurbs that really reminds me of the style of the Argonauts and Bluets. It's like all these different slippery moments in the story that all connect together and have all of these like little points that connect, but like it's very much like no plot, just vibes. But I could definitely be wrong about that because I don't know a lot about this. It is nonfiction, but I think it like, you know, it genre bends, so some of it is like less reliable than other portions. And she's a French author, and I'll read a little bit since I don't know a lot about it. And It says here that The Years is a personal narrative of the period 1941 to 2006, told through the lens of memory, impressions, past and present, even projections into the future, photos, books, songs, radio, television, and decades of advertising. And I'm really excited about that. That sounds really cool to me, and I love memory as a concept and memory as a literary device. I love messing with time as a literary device, so I'm really excited to read this and tell you my thoughts on it. This book was given to me by my partner's brother, one of my best friends, Jan. It's just a little book about birds, and it's a really beautiful copy. It has gilded edges, and it's just like a stunning book. And it has all of these like really beautiful illustrations of birds. And I know it seems kind of obscure, but I actually really want to get into bird watching. I have like a little porch in my apartment in the city, and I always like to like sit out there and meditate in the morning and read. And sometimes I see like a bunch of birds, and you'd actually be surprised how many birds you see in New York. Like I see like red robins, I see canaries, I see bluebirds. Like it's so crazy that there's such a wild and diverse like bird population in the city, even not a lot going on ecologically. And it's just really crazy to me that there are so many birds in the city, and I find it's a really grounding way to connect to nature for me and to connect to my witchcraft is to birdwatch. So I'm really excited to read this and learn about different types of birds. It's just called The Little Book of Birds. The next book I want to talk about is I got this really small collection of some selected poems of Emily Dickinson, and I got such a beautiful copy. The cover is so stunning. It has all these like gilded, like shimmery portions on it, and the edges are sprayed and gilded. And this copy is honestly so beautiful. I don't even want to annotate it, but I'm kind of nervous, like, because I sometimes can't fully understand poetry if I don't annotate it. But it's so stunning. I think I might just need to take notes as my form of analysis. But I love Emily Dickinson as a queer poet, aspiring poet. You know, I really look up to the tradition of sapphic poets before me, and I love Emily Dickinson's work. Very interested in death in the same way that I am, and she seems very interested in like the dream space. And I just have read a lot of her poems in the past, but I have this giant collection of her poems, and it's very intimidating to me because one thing I need to work on is I have these giant anthologies of poems that I've like picked up because I'm like, oh, I need to work on my poetry, but then I won't read it because I'm so intimidated and I feel like I'll never finish it. So that's one thing I want to work on, is normalizing reading anthologies without the intention of finishing them. But as I work on that, I do think it's important to get like cute little tiny poetry books that I can just get through in a night and just like really cherish and take my time with, not feel like stressed about, even though I know I'm stressing myself out for no reason. But this was From Me to Me. Barnes & Noble had a really nice sale, and I just love the new Barnes & Noble like beautiful edition. I actually got 2 books for myself of those editions. I also got Irish Fairy and Folk Tales. And as I said before, I'm a practicing witch, and I'm very interested in folk magic, and I really want to research specifically Irish folk tales and Irish witchcraft because I'm Irish, and I don't know, I work with Irish deities, so I really want to hone in on that. And I just thought both of these copies are so beautiful, and they look so nice together. And I thought they would look really nice on my altar because this year I really want to transform my desk into like a working altar where I do witchcraft and my writing, so that it's like a constant space of magical, what's the word I'm looking for? Cultivation? I don't know. But I'm really excited about these. And then the next book I want to talk about, it is Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. And this is basically a story about queer aerial silk artists, and I think it's like in the 20s. It's a period piece, and I'm really excited. I love period pieces. I don't read them a lot, but when I get into them, I find them very immersive. And I wrote a poem that was like part of my novella that was like a fictive poem about like these lesbians who were aerial silk artists, and they like fell in love with each other in secret. And this seems to be a very similar vibe, so I really want to read this because also it kind of informs the novel that I'm working on as well. So I think it could be cool to do a reading and writing vlog where I read this and work on my writing at the same time. Definitely just about like the underground aerial art scene and like how it's rooted in like sex work, but also how it's like a radical form of art and expression, and it became a queer safe space, but also within that safe space there were predatory people. That's the vibe I'm getting, but I will definitely tell you if I like this and what my thoughts on it are, and I'm really excited for it. It's also just like a very satisfying density, I don't know. And then I have another collection of short stories called Cursed Bunny, and I've heard a lot about this. Oh my god, the pages are so satisfying. They just have like, you know when pages aren't like perfectly flat, it like looks like an old book when books are published to look like that. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but I don't know. I've heard that this is like really, really good, and the writer is really good, and I think I did a whole rant earlier about how short stories mean so much to me, but I'm not sure if the footage got deleted. So I just wanted to say I love short stories. I think it's so cool that writers can do that. I physically cannot write a short story. Like, I've written one short story I'm proud of, but like it seems way more intimidating to me to write something short than to write a novel, because you can like spend all the time in the world like planning out your plot devices and like your character development and stuff like that. But in a short story, it's just like this snippet that has to contain so much. And so I really like studying that by reading as many short story collections as I can. I'm excited to read this one. I'll read a few like little blurbs on the back. Cursed Bunny is unique and imaginative, blending horror, sci-fi, fairy tales, and speculative fiction into stories that defy categorization. By turns thought-provoking and stomach-turning, here monsters take the shapes of furry woodland creatures, and danger lurks in unexpected corners of everyday apartment buildings. But in this unforgettable collection, translated by the acclaimed Anton Her, Chung's absurd, haunting universe could be our own. I'm really excited about this. It seems very disturbing. I like to be disturbed, and I can't wait to read it. I will definitely give you my review when I finish it, but I would definitely put this in like a 5-star prediction. And the next book I want to talk about is Sweet Bean Paste. I think these were both from my sister Rachel. Thank you so much, Rachel. And Sweet Bean Paste is about family, and it's about femininity within family, and it's about ancestral healing and ancestral connection. I'll read you the little blurb on the back because it's another case where like I heard really good things, but I didn't want to read too much into it, so I don't know that much about the story, but I will read into I'll read you the little blurb so you get an idea of what it's about. Santero has failed. He has a criminal record, drinks too much, and his dream of becoming a writer is just a distant memory. With only the blossoming of the cherry trees to mark the passing of time, he spends his days in a tiny confectionery shop selling dorayaki, a type of pancake filled with sweet bean paste. Until, that is, Toku comes into his life. An elderly woman with disfigured hands and a troubled past. She makes the best sweet bean paste Santaro has ever tasted. The unlikeliest of friendships blossoms, but it will take all of their resolve and plenty of pancakes to protect themselves when Toku's dark secret comes to light. That sounds pretty good to me. I'm really excited to read it. I can't wait to learn more about what it's about and to share that with you when I finish. And then my little sister Lauren got me this Toni Morrison selected essays, speeches, and meditations. It's called The Source of Self-Regard. We both love Toni Morrison, so we talk about her all the time. We were somewhat buddy reading Beloved, like she read it before me and we wanted to talk about it after I finish it, but I'm still in the middle of it. I just really cherish her as an author, and I feel like there's so much that can be gained through her insight, and I'm really excited to read this. I just want to talk about a few poetry collections next. I picked up Asylum by Jill Bialosky, and this technically isn't one of my Christmas presents, but I wanted to include it because I don't know if I'm going to be doing a lot of hauls on my channel because I just want to be more aware about my consumption. And I picked this up right before Christmas because I had an essay to write for my grad school applications. And I picked this up and one other poetry collection that I'm going to talk about that I don't physically have with me. And I honestly don't know a lot about this, yet again. And it says it's a personal, historical, natural inquiry in 103 lyric sections. And I just like picked this up at the store and it really spoke to me, just like flipping through the poems and reading a few of them. I'm honestly just very interested in the form of the lyric. I haven't used it a lot, and I really like long form poetry and like more melodic, like rhythmic forms of poetry, so I really want to like read this to study that. I didn't end up writing an essay on this. Instead, I wrote about the Rupture tense by Jenny C. That is one of the best poetry collections I've ever read. That collection basically does something that I called in my essay recollection cartography, which is basically memory map making. So Jenny C uses the memories of photographs, of archival research, and memories of her ancestors and her own memories to create this map of like diasporic yearning and just like exploring immigration and high identity, and it's just like a really, really good book. And I can't really express verbally how much I really cared about that book, but it really impacted me, and I really liked how she used longer form poetry. I might put my essay up on like a blog or something like that to share it with you guys, or do like a longer reflection, but I'll definitely have a review on my Instagram soon. And I'm excited to read this as well. And then this is also technically not my Christmas stuff. Cold Night, Long Dog by Jordan Smith. So Jordan is he used to be my poetry professor and thesis advisor, and he sent me a copy of his newest poetry collection, which I'm so excited about. Thank you so much, Professor Smith, and just a really important mentor in my life. And I've read several of his other collections and I really loved them, so I can't wait to read this. And I just really appreciate that we're still connected even though I've graduated, and he's still willing to mentor me and share his work with me, so I'm just really excited to read this. The next book I want to talk about is Today a Woman Went Mad in the Supermarket. This is another case where I don't know that much about it, but I'm really interested in mental illness and how that's portrayed and invested in fiction and nonfiction, but I just really, really am passionate about mental health and about psychotic disorders specifically, because that's something that, you know, I have my own debilitating psychotic disorders, and that has been something that's really defined my life, and as a result I've just been really invested in how to convey that through literature, how to explore that, and how to create like three-dimensional characters with mental illnesses. And I just think anytime that like I want to work on that myself, I also have to look about how other people have done that. Someone on the back wrote that Today a Woman Went Mad in the Supermarket is electric, with wit, with rage, with grief, with the kind of prose that makes you both laugh and thrill to the darker, spikier emotions, just barely visible under the bright surface, with a wonderful collection of stories. I was honestly just like really drawn to it based off the title, because it reminded me of that scene in What We Did on Holiday, I think that's the name of the movie, where one of the characters has like mental health episode in a supermarket and she like starts throwing these vegetables all over the place. And as someone who has a psychotic disorder, I like really related to that moment. And so as soon as I saw the title, I was like, well, that sounds like something I'm gonna really resonate with. Just like how mental health and like madness is so deeply entrenched with like mundanity and just like everyday experiences, and how strange it is to be mentally unraveling and see like normal things like supermarkets around you during that time. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm really excited to read that. This is the book that I am the most excited about. It's called Legends and Lattes. If you're on Instagram, Bookstagram, Booktube, especially Sapphic Booktube or Cozy Fantasy Booktube, or TikTok or Instagram, you probably have heard of this book. I am so excited to read this. It's basically a story about this troll who, you know, she was fighting, she was out there, you know, doing the warfare thing, and she decided instead that she, you know, needed to take a step back and take care of herself and do something cozy and open a cafe. And that sounds amazing to me. I really like that shift away from violence to cozy, like, community. And also I just hear from a lot of people who've read it that the characters are so beautiful, and that even though not that much happens, like, the book is just, like, kind of like a warm hug. Like, it's so exciting to me. And also there's, like, a little sapphic plot, which I'm really excited about. And I have been waiting to read this book. I got it for Christmas and I've wanted to read it ever since I got it, But I really want to do a reading vlog with this, and I want to read it with my other... I have another sapphic fantasy short story collection that I got a long time ago called Silk and Steel, and I'm halfway through it, so I want to do a reading vlog where I read that and I read this. And I want to wait till I'm back in New York so that I can go to like some fantasy themed like cozy cafes while I read. And it's killing me not to read this, and I can't wait to read it, and I'm really excited to tell you about it. And if you haven't heard about this, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Little sister got me All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy, and I'm really excited to read this, but at the same time I am very skeptical to read this because my partner and my sister have like polar opposite reviews on this book. My partner did not like this book. She found it very boring and just like a little bit misogynistic, and I'm very tendent to trust that perspective, but at the same time my younger sister told me that like it's very philosophical and like it's interesting to see cowboys talking about philosophy, and it's a really important book to her. And I really value her perspective as well, so I'm willing to check it out. But I definitely like have some skepticism going into it. And then this book I got right after Christmas during Barnes & Noble's hardcover 50% off sale. I wasn't planning to get this for a while, but getting a $30 book for $15 is such a steal. And this is Nona the Ninth, and this is one of my favorite series of all time. I'm honestly not a series girl, but I might be becoming one after reading this. I honestly wish that I could like get my PhD in literature and do an entire dissertation on this series, because there's so much to unpack and it represents so much to me in regards to like Sarah Ahmed's theory of like queer phenomenology is like so deeply entrenched into her work, and also just like theories of time and space, and also like the way that hallucinations embody death and queer trauma and mental illness, and like how a lot of the second book can like represent psychosis. I literally am in love with this series. It means so much to me. It's extremely confusing, specifically the second book. But I read both of these books in the past like year and a half. The first two books in the series, Gideon the Ninth and Hera the Ninth. And now I'm ready to read Nona the Ninth, Gideon the Ninth, and Hera the Ninth. Basically, it's a space opera that follows lesbian necromancers. These space lesbian necromancers fall in love at one point. It's like a very heartbreaking trilogy. Well, I think it's actually, there's a fourth book coming. I didn't even know that. The one line, like, I don't want to give anything away about the first two books, but I will say this new book is like from a totally different perspective than we've gotten from the first two books. And I'm really excited to meet the new character, like the new narrator. There's one line on the back that just says, "Her city is under siege, the zombies are coming back, and all Nona wants is a birthday party." Basically, I'm just like really drawn to this because I'm so deeply invested in the series so far. And also, like, normally at the beginning of these, there's like a cast of characters. Instead, there's this like invitation list, and it says, "Dogs to invite to a birthday party." And I too would like to invite many dogs to my birthday party. This is Crying in H Mart, and this is a story of grief and loss. It's a memoir of nonfiction, and the main character has lost her mother, and it's about how she heals through that loss and how she feels full despair through that loss. And it's about her identity that is like sort of contextualized through that loss. And I really like reading books about grief and loss in the winter because I've experienced a lot of grief in my own life and loss in my own life around winter, and one person that passed away in the fall. So during those times, I really like to meditate on grief by writing and reading about loss. And I'm really excited to read this winter. I've been wanting to get my hands on it for a really long time. I've saved the best for last, and that is S by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst. And this is like the most interesting book I've ever heard of because basically it's like printed to look like a library book. It's such a beautiful copy. And basically the premise is that the story is somewhat the story of the book itself is somewhat involved, but the main plot is told through the annotations and the notes within that story. So it's a really like immersive book, and the premise is so engaging to me. I'm so excited. I love annotating. I love looking at other people's annotations. So this is like the most beautiful like form of a book for me, to see like a whole story told in annotations. I can't wait to read this. I've been waiting to open this until I start my reading vlog on it, because I really want to do a full dark academia vlog with this, where I read it in the Rose Room in the New York Public Library and go to like museums and read, because just the premise of like a book being annotations on a library book, that's like the most dark academia it can get, and I really want to make a whole experience out of it for myself and for you guys. So if you haven't heard of this, like I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's a little confusing because there's like the fake name of the book here, and then like the actual name of the book here, because it says like Ship of Theseus is the name of the like library book. And I'm really intrigued to know if like each author was each character of the annotation, or if one author did like the story and then one author did the annotations. I definitely want to look into that. But I'm really excited to read this. The very last things I want to rush through, because I know you've been here for a while, is just 2 bookish items that I'm really excited about. My friend Robert got me this really cute book bag. Like, it's actually a book that's a bag, and it's like a little black magic book. And as I'm a witch, that's perfect for me. And I'm really excited to wear this. It definitely goes with my style. I've always wanted a bag like that. I actually really want to learn how to make a bag like that. And then the last thing I got is this beautiful quill that my partner gave me. Thank you so much, Alex. I'm so grateful for you, because this is like going to activate my dark academia dreams. I am so excited to write my novel with my quill and imagine that I'm in Hogwarts. We hate J.K. Rowling, but I will immerse myself in the world of Harry Potter while criticizing it. To use this, it comes with ink and everything. I want to write letters with this. I want to take Bookstagram pictures with this. I want to write my novel. I want to write poems. I want to write in my grimoire. I want to write spells. And this is just everything to me. I am so excited for it. And if you've made it this far, just know that I really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching my first booktube video. I know it's been a chaotic mess. Just know that in the future I'm gonna really take care to improve in regards to lighting and the quality of my videos and the quality of my microphone. I need to really invest in a microphone. I have one back in my apartment, it's just not here with me. But I'm going to be creating more content about reading and writing, and I really want to make content about mental health. And I might make like annotation videos, I might make videos where I do reading vlogs or writing vlogs or reading reviews or reading challenges. So definitely just comment below if there's anything specific that you're looking for. And thank you so much once again for watching my video. Just take the time to do something nice for yourself today. Practice self-care and maybe read a good book. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate you. Bye! Okay, alright.